Okay. Hi, Beatrice. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you for having me.
So, you got a book. You got a book out called, what's it called?
Mindless Behaviors, Breaking Through Unseen Barriers.
Okay. Is this your first book?
This is my first book.
All right.
Yes.
Why did you decide to write this book?
Well, I decided to write the book because I was in the midst of a huge transition, and it was like a life transition. I was in a crossroads, working a lot of hours, relationships failed, and it's just kind of like a huge transitional period in my life. And I always thought I was going to write a book in my 60s. And I was like, the book just came out of me. And like, I was like, okay, well, I've always been like, what's my purpose? What do I want to do? So I finally, during that transition period, the Mindless Behaviors book was done. So I really didn't really think of writing a book in that, a few years ago till just kind of like I have something to say, I have a message, and it just came out.
So, the idea of mindless behaviors, why don't you explain what that is?
So mindless behaviors is about unconscious biases that keeps us stuck in our lives. You can say is I call them micro issues of oppression. So in my book, through storytelling, you can call them storytell, through stories, through parables, I unravel these different specific behaviors. I have seven that I talk about in my book, and like why, from my perspective, why why do they exist, and what can we do to overcome them? So they're very is behaviors that we picked up through growing through life, and also through what we inherited, and also the social norm.
So, these behaviors are things that people might not even realize that they're doing, that it was just something that.
Yes.
Where did they get them from? Did they get them from their parents or school or where?
From different aspects of your life. So you can either inherit them unconsciously through our systems and also through our different experiences. And I always talk about how through life we've been handed an invisible book. And so the invisible book really talks about that invisible book is like, go to school, here's your religion. It's almost like your life is unconsciously mapped out for you, but they didn't say it's mapped out. So through that time, we might kind of mimic what we see, and like what we see, we basically replicate through our lives. So what I try to do is identify like, hey, you know what? There are behaviors and there are patterns where we do. And if we're not aware, it can actually wreak havoc on your life. So it's what we inherited, social environments, even what we picked up along the way.
How did you come to this realization? You mentioned that you had some bad relationships, but what was in that that sort of like your epiphany moment that you said, oh, this is what it's about? What happened that made you realize this?
Well, I had a huge breakdown, and it was because of an ex of mine that I did, and it was almost like I find myself in these different patterns, but not only find myself in these different patterns, like just it could be either like dating emotionally unavailable men, or just being shown off in like two relationships. And I wanted to know, where did I get those patterns from? And I just discovered I actually inherited them from, like, some of the situations, some of the behaviors that my parents had too are similar to what I was mirroring in not only my relationships, but in different aspects of my life. But not only that, I'm a pattern person. So I find different patterns, and I always want to know how things work. And so this is a huge pattern I see that really goes undetected.
This was a pattern with you or with your ex or both?
It's a pattern with me, and both of us had a bad pattern.
Does he have a copy of your book?
I don't know. Maybe.
You should send him one. Yeah.
I should. It was not only the ex, it was like different, it was like the same pattern that showed up in different aspects of my relationships too. So it was like it's almost like there's an old saying, how you do one thing, you do everything. And like that is a real story. It is real. And then if you're not aware of it and don't catch it, it can, that is unhealthy. It kind of wreaks havoc. So
So once you realize this sort of pattern behavior, how do you break it? Where do you start?
once you become aware, you don't go back. But how you break it is that like this is the easiest way to do it. Find one thing that is really challenging in your life and have trouble with. And what I said is like instead of playing, because we tend to play the blame game, unconsciously poor me, switch gears and say, hey, where's another way to basically look at this situation? And what am I doing to contribute to this challenge? And so to actually start to be aware and start to shift it, start asking yourself these tough questions. What am I doing to contribute to this challenge that I'm having in my life?
Okay, there could be more than one, right? I mean, there could be a lot of these for some people.
Yeah, if you have like 20, if you had 2,000 challenges, start with one.
Okay, what was the first one you did?
My first challenge was like, I noticed that I tend to be very passive and not, well, this is really general. I think it's a lady thing. I tend not to say no when I need to because I love helping people. And during that time, I was always the doormat to like always helping and overextending myself when I don't need to. And so where did I get that pattern from? I got it from a lot of my family members. My mom was like that. And like there's like different people around me that are like that. So and then I just mirrored it and I said, okay, I need to like take care of myself. So how do I step back and start to switch gears? And like, they always say that you only, as long as you allow it, people will do it. People will continue to do the same thing. People would continue to do that behavior, which enabling bad behavior is like chapter 3 of my book. So I had to shift the lens and say, is this going to be unhealthy for me, or is this going to be healthy? And I had to audit myself.
You mentioned about the blame game, and I know a lot of couples always play the, oh, it's your fault, this is your fault. When you go through your process, do you reverse that and say, okay, this part is my fault?
Yeah, so for me, I just say everything is my fault until it's not.
Okay.
So I only so then I really put it in perspective. Okay, so what did I do to contribute to this? And I only accept what part that I take a responsibility for the behaviors I take part in versus pointing that finger. Because 9 times out of 10, when you point a finger, you're part of the problem.
Well, that's very true. One of your talking points here, I'm just going to read it and give us your response to it. It says, why she often gives people a compass. What does that mean?
The compass is like a great way of exploring your internal, I always say your internal kingdom. And so with me, I noticed that like everything is all about what we externally want to acquire versus what we really want. And if you ask an average person, well, why do you do what you do? They don't have a answer for that. And I feel like we in this grand scheme of things, being an individual within society, as much as we want to say that we are, sometimes most of the time don't exist because we're basically playing out the recorder of someone before, a generation before us, or a relative, or the invisible book that was given to us in the beginning.
Does the book apply only to personal relationships, or can you use this at work? Does it work for people in a business environment?
It does in all walks of life. I feel like business and personal is one and the same. It's one coin, two sides.
Because I know that in working in an office situation, people can bring their personal problems to work, and that doesn't always work out for everyone else. So when you're at work, you want to make sure that you've got sort of your head in the right place. Is that right? And not play the
That's
blame
true.
game with everyone else at work as well?
Yeah, I feel like that, like, especially in work environments, there's this unsaying that business and personal don't mix, but everything that we judge people based on personal personal characters, personal things that they do. So it is highly impossible to not bring your personal business to work. Now, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, this is going to exist. You got to be able to cope and emotionally regulate yourself so you won't be trauma vomiting on your coworkers when you go to the workplace.
I like that term, trauma vomiting. Yeah. I know there was a lot of people that I had like that when I used to work at an office. We didn't have that term, but that's a very good term. Okay. How long has your book been out now?
It's been now since October 2020.
Oh, so a couple of years. All right. And how's it doing? What kind of response are you getting from it?
I've been getting a really good response, and I know I launched it during the pandemic, just kind of just to for me, I always think that, like, letting it grow is a like starting small and letting it grow. And so people that read the book read it twice, three times. I know someone that read it four times, and I'm like, oh, thank you, I'm flattered.
Oh, well, that's great. All right. Well, we got to wind this down. We are out of time. Thanks so much for coming on. Do you have a website you want to give out?
Yes, you can go to check me out at www.mindless-behaviors.com.
Okay, great. And there's links there where people can buy the book and find out more
Yeah.
about you. Yeah.
Yes, they can learn more about me, what I'm doing, the social initiative, and different ways to buy the book.
Okay, great. Well, Beatrice, thanks so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing, and best of luck with your